Hey Rockstars, I'm JB, expert salesperson and master presenter.
I'm the doctor, psychologist, and behavioral expert.
This is the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab podcast.
We're high-performance coaches that help service-based professionals and entrepreneurs take their skills to the next level.
70% of entrepreneurs fail, which is why every week we have real talk with real entrepreneurs to help ensure you are not one of them.
We're also the inventors of the Be Rich mindset,
where we rise to mastery,
inspire greatness,
celebrate knowledge,
and help others along the way.
So join us in the lab.
And now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the lab. I'm JB.
I'm the doctor.
If you're joining us for the first time, thanks for visiting the lab with us, where we have real talk with real professionals. Grateful for you to be here. Do us a favor, listen through the whole episode. If you like it, if you learned something, if it was worthwhile, give us a 5-star review, share us, subscribe, follow, whatever you can do to help us out. That is how we grow, and we appreciate you for it. If you happen to be a listener returning, we love you, rock stars. Seriously. Continue supporting us. We're here to provide you the very best insight and value that we can, and bring on some of the best professionals that we can find to help give you some of their wisdom so you can succeed in whatever you're trying to accomplish in your life.
That sounded very motivating. I liked it. Well, while you're out there doing all those things, if you want to tell a friend or two about the podcast, we would really appreciate that also, because they're going to trust your word on how awesome that it is, even if you have to lie to them.
Well, that's true. I'm not used to getting a compliment from you. You liked what I had to say?
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did, out loud too.
Let's start over.
This is recorded. It's indefinite. We're gonna make a lot of posts just using that audio. You're not living it down.
All right, I guess so. Do what I have to do.
You will do what you have to do. And super excited, Doc. I mean, truly, we got a great guest joining us. We don't always have good friends joining us, but in this instance, I do have a good friend joining us, and I'm super excited because not only is he a good friend, fantastic coach, fantastic mentor, and somebody that I think is going to be very worthwhile hearing from. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Coach Machen MacDonald of ProBrilliance. What's up, man?
Hey, JB. Hey, Doc.
Good to see you.
Coach.
Good to be seen, especially with you on this screen here. This is awesome.
I know. We love it. And it's a real treat, because I've wanted to have you out on the podcast for quite a while now. And we're finally able to make everything work out. And even the winter storms up in the Tahoes ain't stopping us from knocking it out here. So that's awesome.
That's right. Gotta love tech when it works.
It's always great when it works.
Right.
So, Mach, do us a favor, man. For our listeners out there listening to us on the podcast, or the people watching us on YouTube, just share a little bit about who you are, what the business is, and let's start there to kick it off.
Yeah. So basically, for the last 20 years, I've been a strategic business coach, primarily working with small business owners and financial advisors. And JB, as you know, I used to be a financial advisor, retired from that, doing that for about 20 years. So I know the ins and the outs, and the mindset and the head trash that a lot of advisors have. So I can definitely help them grow their business. And that's where I get to have a ton of fun. And basically, I think you might agree that the success or failure of any small business is like 99% the mindset of the owner. And so I get to help them formulate their plans and then hold them accountable to the plan. And when they hit a hiccup or a speed bump, we dive into that and help them break through, learn, do, and break through, as I say. And it's just a lot of fun. Coming up on 30 years of marriage with my wife in June. So excited about that. Got 3 kids. None of them are wearing orange jumpsuits. So I guess we did something right. And just really excited to be here with you guys.
That's great, man. So you started as an advisor, right? And then you kind of worked your way into the coaching side of things. What drove you to becoming an advisor in the first place? That's not a field that a ton of people go into, especially not advisor, right? You might hear insurance a lot, but advisor is a little different. So what kind of prompted you to even start exploring that field?
Yeah, good question. So the story is I've always been kind of a serial entrepreneur. I mean, even back in college, if you can see that yellow poster, it's a water ski school poster. And that's how I got myself through school. And then I had created a couple other gigs, and I had a business in San Francisco. It was a citywide concierge service. And one year, $1 Million Roundtable was out in San Francisco. And we got contacted by a lot of producers, or, these guys were like top of the table producers. And we were helping them, navigate San Francisco and have a great time and so forth. And a couple of these guys kind of took me under their wing, and they said, and back then I was like, young 20s, and they're like, you would be great in financial services, and they were like trying to recruit me. And so it got my attention, and the timing wise happened that me and my partner, who had the concierge company, American Express, tapped us on the shoulder, and they liked what we had to say. So, we actually got kind of a cool opportunity to sell the business. And then my partner went into something else, and I, was kind of noodling this idea of being an advisor. And I started to interview with different career agencies, insurance companies in the San Francisco area, and zeroed it down into working with the Mutual of New York, which became the Money Group. And then AXA bought the Money Group, and AXA is now Equitable. So we all know how that
and on and on and on. Yep.
Right. So I became an advisor, an insurance guy. I got my 7 license as well. And, as you know, when you have any modicum of success in that business, they try to pull you into management. So I got tapped on the shoulder, became a sales manager. And then I worked as an agency manager for a brief stint. And then I got called into the home office to basically go around the country helping our agencies and producers better market their practices. And I did that through creating business plans, helping them create the business plan, and then in essence, holding them accountable. So I got a kind of an introduction to what coaching was early on, and it was successful. And then, when AXA ended up buying our company, I survived a bunch of rounds of layoffs, and I just kind of got the writing was on the wall that it might be good for me to hang out my shingle as a coach at that time. So I did, and my phone started blowing up with other advisors that weren't in that organization. And, knock on wood, after 20 years, it's been a nice ride.
Apparently something's working if it's been going on 20 years now since you started doing that. So you're clearly doing a great job. You brought up business plan, you brought up accountability.
Yeah.
Foundational in your mind to being a coach and working with entrepreneurs and professionals? Yeah, what's the importance level of those two pieces of it?
I think they're huge. As a matter of fact, I've formulated something I call 5x5 traction, which the first 5 is you got to answer 5 key questions when it comes to building out your business plan. We call it a business acceleration plan. First question we have to answer is, where are you headed over the next 3 to 5 years, and what do you want your business to look like, right? That's the vision. Got to have a future, a compelling future in front of you to pull you. Next question is, why the heck are you in business? Right? What's your strength? What do you bring to the table? And what's the benefit, impact, or even transformation that your ideal clients are going to experience as a result of you doing what you do so well? That gives you your mission. And then we look at, what do you want to focus on and commit to getting done and be intentional with, or goals, KPIs, whatever you want to call it. So we figure out what are the top 5 or 6 of those that you want to accomplish over the course of a year. And then most importantly, how the heck are you going to do it? Right? That's the strategy. So we help bring forth your best strategic thinking and capture that. And then finally, what are the projects that need to be done and who's going to do what by when? So it answers those 5 key questions. And once you've got that, then you got to continue to look at it and stay accountable to it. So we have something we call the image process, IMAGE. Again, 5 elements. And the I is, each day, what's your intention? be clear on what your intention is for the day. The M is magic or miracle, right? As a matter of fact, 20% of my business plan, revenue wise, is coming from magic, stuff I can't even think of or imagine at this point. It just shows up. It's been doing that ever since I've been doing my business plan. And so the again, the M, the magic, the miracle is just notice how the world is working and conspiring on your behalf. Even if it's finding a dime in the parking lot at the grocery store, it's like the universe telling us we're abundant. The A is for affirmations or ask formations, right? We all know an affirmation is I am something. I am confident. I am successful. I am prosperous. But a lot of times that'll trip off the BS meter. And so to get to the place of it not tripping off the BS meter, we go to ask formations, which is why am I confident? Why am I successful? And like Google, our brain will go out, try to find the evidence, come back with it, and then help us really feel what it is we're wanting to feel or remember it actually. And we get engaged. And then the G, my favorite, is gratitude, right? We can't feel confungled and be in gratitude at the same time. So if you're having a bad day, count your blessings, right? Just look at what's going well and snap back. And then the E is expansion. And what that means is taking inventory at the end of the day. What went well? Why did it go well? Why do you deserve it to go well? And capture it. And so each day we've have our clients, and myself included, where we end up capturing those 5 components and then looking back over the day saying, day well lived, life well lived. Look back over to the week well lived, week, well done. And it just keeps that momentum going. And I challenge people, do that for 6 days in a row. You're not going to want to stop. I mean, I've been doing it for years now, every single morning and evening. And it takes like 5 minutes.
Listening to what you're saying there, Machen, you've got, it feels like a lot of systems in place. Is that a fair thing to say?
I'd like to think I have systems in place. I aspire to have systems in place. And yes, I do. And there's a lot of room for improvement. You know what system stands for, by the way?
Tell me.
Save yourself time, energy, and money.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that cool? I learned that from Mark Victor Hansen.
I like that a lot. So you're a big proponent of systems, obviously. And I'm curious, just kind of thinking it through from a professional or a business owner, it can be, to your point, save yourself time, energy, money, but it can be time consuming. It could just take time to put systems in place. Do you see people struggling with that a lot? Or is that a large part of what the coaching actually does, is allow me to fast forward that?
Yeah, good question. So it's a lot of people, we make up the story that it's going to take me time to do this. I don't have the time. There's not enough time. So a lot of what we do is we help people recognize what's the internal thinking that's going on and recognize how do we not necessarily rewire it, but redirect it so that we can feel we do have the time. Because the only thing that's real is now anyway. So it's all about a matter of coming back to the present moment.
Can I put a word around it? Maybe context. And actually, what you brought up earlier in the middle of image, which was the second 5x5, right? The second part of 5x5, in the ask formations, versus affirmations. You brought up the why behind it, and it's just very, very interesting to me because you and I have had this conversation previously where I felt affirmations are kind of like I don't know if affirmations quote unquote work for me, and you suggested, hey, why don't you take a look at what you're actually doing and saying? Yeah. And I found it interesting. But I'm reading a book recently, the Humble Inquiry. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Peter Shane and Edgar Shane, great sales book. Mm-hmm. Which is why I picked it up. It was on a list of really great sales books. But the premise, it seems from the book, is the exact premise behind Askformations, which is context. Why? Why is it being told to you? Why are you hearing it? Why is the question being asked? Why are you asking that question? What's the context behind it? And pulling yourself out of stuff to look at the context and how powerful it can be. So I'm just getting that sense from you in what you're saying. And it's just really interesting.
Yeah, it's, why is so powerful, right? We, Simon Sinek and the power of why. It's all over the place.
I love that one.
And it's my understanding is it helps us connect back in with our purpose, right? With, why we're on this big blue marble, and why just kind of pulls us back to that thread. It's like I tell a lot of my clients is, it's like, I don't have the answers when I'm working with you. The answers show up in the moment, right? And they're co-created. And I think that's, because there's two whys that come together in that meeting, so it's powerful stuff for sure.
If any of these book authors are listening, we will gladly take a affiliate link and or sponsorship for our podcast, if you don't mind. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, Simon, if you want to be on our podcast, I mean, you got to fill out the request just like everybody else. There's no favors here, man. And we'll consider you. Doc, we talk about that though a lot, right? We talk about the why and coming back to the why. That's a large part of what we talk about in our practice. And just any thoughts on your end around that?
I think those things naturally go together, right? To get the how, you have to know a part of the why to make the how work. And I think that's obviously why we work so well together, because we deliver both of those components. And that's what I'm hearing from Coach also is the why sets the standard on what's going to come next. And if you can get a grasp of that, it keeps you motivated. It keeps the wheels moving. It keeps those moments where you get kind of stuck in perspective so you can push through them. So the why is super important.
Yeah.
So let's zero in on that then, Doc. Coach, accountability. So kind of the second part of what you brought up earlier was around accountability, and when people kind of fall off the rails or off the cart.
Yeah.
Pretty common, I would think, in your experience. So is that losing track of the why, or what really drives people falling off from their goals? Why are people not honoring their commitments?
Oh boy. You got a couple hours. No, I think here's what I come up with around accountability. And I like to use the word holding people capable rather than accountable, because everybody's capable of doing what they say they're going to do for the most part. And so, as a coach, with somebody says, hey, I want to do this, I'll check in with them. Is that realistic given, constraints of time and everything else that's in the mix? And if they say, yeah, I can do it. It's right. And then I'll go, okay, what kind of support might you need? Or, and help them with that. And then once they say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, then it becomes an agreement. It's a commitment they make with themselves. And most people are pretty good at keeping agreements. And if they're going to break an agreement, it's usually with themselves than it is with somebody else. And so we check in with, why did you break the agreement with yourself? So in other words, we'll revisit what was the agreement or the commitment. And then they'll state what it is, and we'll ask, did you do it? Well, no. And then the story starts, this happened, like, hold on. So from that point, we then say, well, what did you choose to do instead? Because everything is a choice, right? You chose not to keep this agreement, probably because you made something else more important, right? Little Johnny comes home, he busted his arm, we got to go to the doctor, that's more important than me doing X, right? So it's always moving. But once somebody understands, that maybe it was something, a belief that they had about themselves that kept them from keeping the agreement, that's where we want to check in with people. So it's like, what was the belief you had about yourself that kept you from keeping this agreement? And a lot of times it comes down to something like, well, I didn't think anybody would notice, or, It wasn't that big of a deal or whatever it might be. And then we help them understand, well, what's the impact of that choice to yourself and to other people? Because unfortunately, in today's world, there's a phrase that just is overused. I wish we could take it out of the vocabulary, and that's, I'm sorry, right? Oh, I didn't make it on time, or I didn't follow through, or I'm sorry, I'll do better next time. BS, and it's not the BS you're thinking, it's a belief system. So it's a matter of, okay, you chose not to do this or chose to do something else. What was the impact? Now let's look at why. Comes back to the why, right? Why did you choose that? What do you believe is true about yourself or the world around you that caused you to make that choice? A lot of advisors that I work with, they're challenged with, their health. They're very successful financially, but, one of the things that slipped is their health. And it's like, they want to lose a few pounds. And it's like, okay, well, let's build a plan around that. And then they don't keep their commitment to themselves. Well, what was your thought when you reached for that bag of chips? Well, it's not going to matter anyway, or da, 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 da. I'm like, well, who matters? Well, I matter. Do you? Yeah. And I mean, there's times where people will break down in tears because they finally get that they do matter and that they're going to meet up with their full potential at some point in their life. And there may be a gap of what their full potential is with what their performance is. And to that degree, that's hell. We want to be operating at our full potential.
Can you just that very last part you brought up there, we want to be operating at our full potential. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Because that's a BS, right? That's a belief system right there, and a powerful one.
That we want to operate at our full potential.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that I look at it is we all have this capability, right? That's holding people capable of based on their capacity, what they know, their learn, everything else. Then there's their performance. To the degree that this gap exists, we are out of our integrity. We're fractionalized, right? Integrity or integer is a whole unit. So we want to get back to being whole versus fractionalized. And, the reality is we're going to have good days and bad days. So we're going to kind of do this, right? But the closer we are here, the happier we are. And the happier we are, the more progress we make. The more progress we make, the happier we are. So it becomes this awesome upward spiral versus hanging out down here and it becoming a downward spiral full of excuses.
By the way, that was not a setup, although I think the doc and I can both agree when we talk about the be rich mindset, which is our value system that we talk about. Rising to mastery is the R, and be rich. We want and have a need to really rise to our full potential and to continue on that journey, because from our perspective, it's an ongoing journey. And I just love your focus here, Machen, because we talked about it all month of January. It's about commitment, and it's daily choices. People get very focused on goals and finish lines and this metric, but it's the result comes when we focus on the every choice in front of us right now, right? Goals are future, commitment is now. It's the choices we make at this time in this moment. So love what you're saying and just agree wholeheartedly with everything I'm hearing from you. And just that concept of integer and integrity. It's great, man. I love it. It's absolutely awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I find people are wanting in their life, is just to feel more whole, and we all get a sense of where we're fractionalized, whether it's in our health, our relationships, or our business or finances. And, life has a wonderful way of showing up and getting our attention with stuff. So, we take a look at what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and help them understand that everything is working together for their benefit. It's not that things happen to us. And it's not just that they happen for us, but they happen through us. And we get to affect our life in that regards, right? There's a lot of stuff that's out of our control, obviously, right? We can't change gravity or the weather or, certain forces, but there's a lot of stuff that is in our control. And then we have to get real and figure out, okay, what am I really willing to put time, money, and energy into changing or improving? And the other stuff, if I'm not willing to put that energy into it, I have to accept it. And so as soon as I can accept what I'm not willing to change and move into the areas where I can, knowing what my bandwidth is, life gets pretty cool. I'm going to get another sponsor for you here. No, but David Allen wrote a book called Getting Things Done. And one of the favorite quotes that I pull out of that all the time is, people only complain about things they think should be different, but aren't willing to take the risk to make it so. Right? So if we can identify, like, what am I really willing to do? If I'm not willing to do, get over it. Stop complaining about it.
Well, you brought up discomfort kind of twice now. You talked about that gap between where we're at and our potential is hell. And I don't know that I disagree, because it's painful that making those changes, affecting those changes in our lives is uncomfortable. And there's something to be said about being uncomfortable. And I have a personal bone here, I think, where I hear people say, stretch your comfort zone. You want to be more comfortable doing, these other things. To me, I almost don't know if it's about being comfortable. I think it's about being uncomfortable. We should be uncomfortable. Life's not just about sitting in a cushioned chair all day and, just having everything work out your way. That's not life. That's not living. It's not fulfilling. Discomfort's a good thing. It's good for us as people and humans.
Yeah. It's pressure, right? It's pressure gets us to move.
Yes.
The tallest trees suffer the strongest wind, the brightest, strongest coral, the hardest waves, right? Life is no different. Life is hard. I mean, I don't know what your thought on that is, but my belief, life is hard, especially right now with the last 2 years or however many years, is going on. Our emotional stamina is being challenged in a huge way. Life is hard, and then someday we're going to die. So let's find a way to enjoy as much as we can and recognize the stuff we can't control, because, bad things happen. And sometimes we just have to accept it. And there's a Latin phrase, amor fati, which means love your fate, right? It's your life. You're not going to get another one this go around anyway, based on whatever your beliefs are. So love your life, and there's going to be hard parts to it. And don't wish it were easier, wish you were better, right? Jim Rohn used to say that all the time, and it's been spouted by all kinds of people in different ways. And that's where we've got to look at, what do I need to be more resilient? And this goes all the way back to, like Seneca, in the Roman Empire, right? It's like, it's people, don't dare because it's difficult. Well, it's difficult because you don't dare. Step into those challenges. They're there to help you, and you do that stuff now. And now the hard stuff, that was hard today is a walk in the park tomorrow.
Yeah. We learn our capacity.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the key at the end there, right? I understand what JB's saying about the uncomfortable, and you want to challenge that and not live in just comfort. But what happens if you stay too long in the discomfort? That becomes discouraging. So the idea is that you make that uncomfortable comfortable so that you can continue on with it.
Yeah.
And I think the other big piece that we miss just in society, because we're supposed to be positive and happy all the time, that is a sarcasm if you couldn't see me roll my eyes on that one, unless you're watching on the YouTube, which if you guys aren't watching, we are now on YouTube on every podcast. So check us out. I think that's that misconception that we're supposed to be happy all the time and we're not supposed to feel emotion. Feeling emotion's good. Like every emotion we have for a reason. Yep. It's when we get obsessed with those emotions is when they become challenging. And that's even happy and positive is still challenging. So we want to feel emotions as they come and just experience them. And it keeps us level when we do.
Yeah. Emotions, I always look at that emotion is energy in motion, emotion, right? So it's our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs that drive the emotion, which drives our actions, which gets us our result, just psychology 101. And if we're feeling off and the emotion is off, oftentimes we can look at our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs, or our frame of what's going on. It's not necessarily the event that causes us to be upset. It's our thought about the event that causes the upset. And there's going to be, if we lose a loved one or our business, gets hammered in some way, yeah, we're going to feel it, based upon the perspective or the frame that we have. But the good news is, no matter what the situation or circumstance that we find ourselves in, we always have the power to choose the healthiest perspective. It might take us a little while to find it, but that's where our power is, and like Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, there's that gap of the stimulus and the response. Well, what's the story we make up in that gap? That's our power. That's what we get to do going forward.
100% with you on that. It's the lens we look through, right? And the interpretation we have on the experiences we have in life that are going to drive, how we really respond and our reaction to that stimuli. It's why you can go to a funeral and somebody could be grief stricken and somebody else could be celebrating their life. Yes. They're both equally valid interpretations and reactions to the stimuli. It's just two different responses to it, and neither invalid or right or wrong. Right. And it's not that you can't be in one place and then, have another interpretation or review it through another lens at another time. Right. It's a very powerful thing. It sounds like a large part of what you do in your coaching when you're working with people is just kind of sometimes help them take a step back there and be able to view that.
Yeah. It's like, could this mean something else? What else could this mean?
Right. What assumptions are you making here? Right. And what belief systems are you implicitly bringing into this? And you kind of almost alter an experience when you bring belief systems in, good or bad.
Yeah. And I want to touch on one thing that I think I heard the doc say, which was, society expects us to always be happy, right? And if you're doing it right, you're always happy. You're always the optimist. And I don't know, that's even possible, right? We're human beings, having this experience, and there's based upon, who we are and what we're made up of, we're going to have, those hard experiences, and it's going to feel tough and hard. And rather than just trying to rise above it all the time, and suppress it and deny it, I believe we've got to digest it. We've got to move through those emotions, because emotions are real, right? And if we can give ourselves the gift and the permission to move through the hard emotions, the anger, the sadness, the fears, and so forth, we can get to the other side. But if we're constantly batting that away, it's going to find a way to catch up in a stronger way that can maybe take us out.
Yeah, we call it toxic positivity. When you're trying to make everything fit into positive. That's why, there's a movement right now where people are trying to do that, right? Just don't worry, just be happy, be positive all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's always you could always take something good from it. You're still alive. There's always a good, yes, to a certain extent though, but when that becomes overriding where you're not allowed to feel what you're going through and have rationalization and process, nothing good's going to come from that. Yeah. And when you staunch those emotions, when you push them down and you bury them, that's when the explosion happens, right? Yeah. The pressure builds up. When you see that road rage and that stuff, is because people aren't processing that anger and that frustration when they're feeling it. Yep. That they bottle it, and then it comes out because it has to come out somewhere. My favorite example, I don't know if I've told on the podcast, so it might be a good chance, is everybody familiar with like the Sarah McLachlan commercials with the dogs and the
tearjerkers?
Right.
Of course.
And it's sad, right? But then you find yourself like crying and like to the extreme when those things happen, is because you've buried those emotions and they built up, and now your body's like, oh, I'm allowed to let a little bit out. I'm going to let it all out because you haven't let me let it out in forever.
Yeah.
And that's when we see those extremes and emotions kind of come, is because your body's like, oh, I need to take advantage of it while I can. And if you allow it when it feels, you don't get that kind of buildup. You don't get that kind of explosion. You get the proper amount each time, and you can regulate your emotions so much better.
Yeah, that's the regulation is huge. I always have used the analogy of, if you throw a pebble in water, it does, small ripples. You throw a boulder, it does boulder ripples, right? And a lot of times, like, what looks like a pebble to one person feels like a boulder to another. And we wonder, what's the overreaction? And I think, to your point, Doc, it's, people have not given themselves the permission to feel that and move that energy when it happens. Right. And there's that saying that, we're never upset for the reasons that we think. It's not because the person merged over and, cut us off or whatever. That's not really why we're upset. It's because, we're probably having an argument with our wife before we left for the office, kind of a thing. And it's just like, I'm going to take it out I'm going to project it, throw it out over here, versus addressing where it needs to be addressed at the time it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, we definitely stack stuff things that aren't relevant to each other, and stack them on top of each other to hold that pressure too.
Yeah.
They can go into a whole other podcast about stacking.
Right.
The whole conversation's fascinating. Here, I was going to be cheeky and be like, "Is that why I cry every time I hear like certain music? Because I don't let myself cry any other time." Yeah, I'm sure I've just learned that yes, that's probably true. This is why I am business partners with a therapist, because he helps give me therapy without even knowing it. Although he'll tell you he doesn't do therapy on the podcast. He's just acting as a coach.
This is not a therapist, Jess. If
Yeah.
you need therapy, please find one.
Yes, exactly. But what I'm hearing from you both is we need to really accept our emotions. Their emotions are neither good nor bad. We just need to accept and process them, and we need to give ourselves the opportunity to do so. And we do that, we're going to be in a much healthier position to do everything else.
Yeah. For me, I always think, when I'm feeling a sadness or an anger, and oftentimes sadness is like right underneath anger. My fear used to be is like, is this feeling going to last forever? Am I ever going to be able to, move through it? And once I understood that, it doesn't last forever, and I can feel it, and I can process it and let it move through me. And it doesn't take all that long, given the severity of whatever's going on. I've learned for myself that I can handle pretty much anything. That feeling of grief or sadness or anger or frustration. It's like, okay, that means I'm alive.
Right.
So it's like, I'm going to feel it. It may not be my most favorite feeling, but it's like, let me feel this and move through it. Because on the other side of it, oftentimes, for me anyway, is just this lightness and this coming back to center and capacity, and I feel in integrity when I feel the sadness. There's times where, I'll cry, or, I'm so upset and livid, I'll scream. I live on 4 acres here, and, my neighbors don't hear me when I do this. So it's, I'll scream at the top of my lungs when I'm frustrated sometimes, and just, move my body to move all that energy. And, 2 minutes later, I'm like ready to go.
Your neighbors don't hear you, but you keep the grizzlies away.
Yes.
But then it's absolutely right, because what you're doing is you're allowing yourself why you feel better in those few minutes is because you allowed yourself to process that emotion in that time.
Yeah.
That's all your body generally needs. Your mind only needs a little while to process these things. It's pretty quick and pretty efficient if we allow it when it's running right. It's like a computer. If it's running up to speed, it can process things really quickly. If you're borrowing it down with a lot of things, it can't.
Yeah.
And the other thing, just while we're talking about emotions, I think could be very helpful for people is to understand what the emotions are. I think a lot of times we group emotions into certain categories, and take some time to understand what frustration and anger feel like for you, because they're slightly different. And fear and anxiety and excitement, like fear and excitement, I think we talked about that on a little podcast a couple ago. They come almost the same, like they look the same a lot of times. So if you can really get a sense of, you might think you're afraid when you're really just excited. So really understanding what the emotions look like for you is very helpful in processing them.
Totally agree.
Man, I don't want this conversation to end. There's whole tangents I'm curious about personally to bring it down. But we don't have the time to ask them. So Machen, we might just need to ask you to come back again sometime, because I've really been enjoying the conversation. While we do have you in the last minute or two here, we understand you've got something for our listeners. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a little 10-point 30-day challenge that I have available for people that want to get a little, kind of continue the conversation, play with the image process, play with the 5x5 and a couple other things that we've talked about here, and some more. So they can go to ProBrilliance.com/10-point, which is right there on the screen. That takes you to my website. And then that 10-point, you just fill out a little form, and I'll send you some emails and some videos over the course of 30 days to basically challenge you to live at your optimal level, so that you can experience what that is and find out how easy it is to actually sustain it. That's a big belief that a lot of people has. I can't keep up that momentum. I can't keep up that drive. And you can, right there. This shows you how to do that based upon how you're wired. It's, different for everybody, but we show you how to tap into that.
It's fantastic, man. And I strongly encourage everybody to check that out, because we can always push more than we think we can. Our mind plays a little trick on us a lot of times. And I'm sure the doc would say, as he always says, one size does not fit all, right? So it does have to be a methodology that works for that specific person. And it's not all cookie cutter there. Machen, man, thanks for joining us. What a fantastic conversation, man. So happy you were able to join us in the lab today. Thank you.
Thank you, JB. Thank you, Doctor. And everybody out there, live the life you want. You can.
Thanks, Coach.
Machen had so much to say, Doc, and I love that we really got to explore a lot on the soft side of being a human, not even being a business person, just being a human and dealing with the emotions. And I could use that conversation to go deeper personally. I just found a lot. I got a lot from the conversation just listening to you two.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate someone who's coaching from that. It's one of the challenges I've had with coaches. Some of the coaches that are out there in the world is they're not really teaching from any kind of educational place, right? They're just taking their $5 certificate they get on Facebook and going out there and spewing out things that they think that are important. But you can tell the difference in the level of professionalism when you can understand the reasoning that they're doing things behind it. And Coach did that. He had, made me really feel like comfortable, like, hey, I can definitely refer him out because I know he's going to be coming from the right place. And that's something that's rare, I think, in this world.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So if you liked what you heard from Machen, absolutely check out his freebie. You can talk to him directly in the lab with us on our Facebook community. He's a fantastic guy, fantastic coach with just a heck of a vast world of knowledge. So take advantage of the resource available to you. And super excited to have him on as a guest. It's just top notch.
And a reminder, I know I touched on through the episode, but we are on YouTube with all this podcast episodes. So if you're listening to us on your favorite podcasting streaming service, that's great. And we love that too. So keep that up. But if you also want to take a look at us and maybe see some of the hand actions that we're doing while we're doing this too, because sometimes we're very lively that way, you can head over to YouTube and find us, JB the Doctor and the Entrepreneur Lab podcast. Same idea.
Yeah. And no matter where you're listening, watching, or seeing us, doesn't matter. Give us a like, follow, subscribe, share, 5-star review. We depend on you. We're grateful for you. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you listened in this entire episode because it was awesome. And you know what? That's it. It's a wrap. JB's out.
And while JB's out, let me remind you to head over to our Facebook group, Entrepreneur Mastery Lab, same name as the podcast. We are doing a live challenge again, talking about sales, and we want you to 3x those sales. So get over there and make sure you're signing up. And then check us out on all the other social media platforms at JB and the Doctor or at jbandthedoctor.com, where you can get all the information about everything we're doing. So we will talk to you later. Peace out, yo.